This is North Pod, a North Melbourne fan podcast, hosted by Jason Hunt.
Stevenson with his own moves. Carrington. North are in front.
Hello and welcome back to North Pod. It's been a couple of weeks since we've connected. It's been a little while. Sorry if you've been sitting by your phone waiting for the podcast to drop. I hope that you've been well fed and well hydrated. This hasn't been a lot to talk about. So I've taken the time. I've had a little rest, and we're getting close to the draft now. So I thought it was about time we did a little pre-draft episode. Yeah, there's been a lot of talk around the trading of the picks, and nothing's happened so far. So yeah, we'll talk about the draft in this episode and kind of what I think's going to happen and what I hope's going to happen. We'll talk about the AFLW. I'm recording this just after the big win from the girls against Melbourne in the qualifying final. So we'll talk about that in the second half of the episode. And I'll try and get us in and get us out pretty quickly. Hopefully I can predict some picks here, but we'll see what happens. So yeah, as I said, there's been lots of talk around, potentially trading up to pick one, and at this stage that hasn't happened. So the pick exchange period is now closed. However, as I'm sure most of my very well educated listeners know, you can trade on draft night. So there is still a chance that we try to trade up to pick one on the night. It looks increasingly unlikely. It just looks like West Coast is pretty happy to take number one and take Harley Reid. I do wonder if we'll throw one last thing at them on draft night, maybe something along the lines of pick 2, pick 15, pick 17. Yeah, it just looks like unless they get two top 10 picks, the Eagles just aren't going to look at it. So that's what I think is. I think we're going to go to the draft with pick 2 and pick 3. I was just kind of thinking around anything else that could potentially happen or that hasn't kind of been discussed, and I'm just saying this not because I've heard it's going to happen at all. I've heard nothing of the sort. I just was thinking around. It looks like, with picks 2 and 3, it's kind of those midfielder types that are around that mark, and we know that's not our biggest area of need. So I was thinking, I wonder if we should have tried to maybe trade one of those picks a little bit down, not far, but a couple of picks down, in order to try and get ourselves a little bit of something extra, but also get us drafting where there's players that we need. So, for example, and of course it depends on being able to find the right match in terms of a trading partner and all those sorts of things. But, if we were able to trade pick 3 down to, say, 5 or 6, and then maybe a pick up like a really late first rounder or a second round pick or something for next year, it just might be worth, toying with the idea of that. As I said, someone's got to be open to it. Someone's got to be keen to try and get one of those really early picks. But I just thought positionally the players around that 5 and 6 are probably a better fit for us, and it gives us that opportunity. I'd definitely be looking at trying to get picks into next year's draft. I think we've got enough for this year. I think you'd maybe be saying, hey, can we trade down to pick 6? But we'd love like an end of first round or early second rounder for next year. So, if you're trading with a club that thinks they're going to finish really high next year, maybe you're looking at their first rounder, or if you're trading with a club that's going to finish low next year, maybe you try to, get their second rounder. As I say, I've heard nothing of the sort. I just thought a bit of a left field one. That's an idea that I had around trying to get us the most value and also positional needs. So that aside, it looks like we're going with picks 2 and pick 3, along with our 15, 17, 18. So let's have a look at what the draft could look like. I certainly have got most of my information from Cal Toomey, AFL.com.au. He does his monthly Phantom Form guide, and he's the one that I trust the most in terms of what the players look like, and also in terms of who he's expecting to go where. I think he's got a really good read on that, and historically he's got it pretty close to the mark. So that's where I've gotten all my my information. Obviously, I've watched a bit of vision of those sort of picks that might be heading our way, but I'm certainly not pretending that I have any kind of insider knowledge at all. I think, I think it is what it is at this point. So looking at the draft, Reid goes at pick 1 to West Coast. I know that there's been that talk around whether or not he'll want to go across to West Coast. I honestly think he'll go there because if West Coast are worried about him going across, they would have traded out pick 1, I think. And maybe that happens on draft night. I guess we'll wait and see. I then think we'll bid on Jed Walter at pick 2 because we would have loved that key position type player. So I think we forced the Gold Coast to take Jed Walter at pick 2, and obviously they'll do that. So then it becomes pick 3 and pick 4 for us. All the talk seems to be that we will take McKercher and Duursma with those picks. So McKercher's a Tassie midfielder. He's inside and out, left footer. We know that Clarko loves a left footer. It just seems from all the talk that it's extremely unlikely that we don't go for him. It looks like he's almost locked and loaded playing for North Melbourne at this point. And I'm happy for us to take one mid with our top picks. It's just I do have concerns over if we take 2 midfield types with our first 2 picks. I really would like one of them to be the best available midfielder, and then we're looking at need after that. And I guess, look, Duursma's a mid-sized forward who can play a bit of midfield as well, but he certainly is not a player that fits our need. Like, he's got some similar attributes to Zerha. He's got some similar attributes to Paul Curtis. Like, he really does fit that medium-sized forward that can play a bit of midfield that we have several of. He sounds and looks like he's an absolute gun in the making. So it's not a slight on him. I think if we take McKercher, I'd love to take someone else. So for what it's worth, I think that's my prediction, that Duursma and McKercher is who we take if we end up picking at 3 and 4. I personally would like to see us take McKercher and then take either Nick Watson or Daniel Curtin, who I'll talk about next. And they're the 2 next best based on everything that I can see. Like, maybe you could argue that Caddy or Sanders is in there, but they're the next best available. I'm sure most of us have heard a bit about them. Watson's that small, crafty forward. He can also mark, but I think the difference between Watson and Duursma is that Watson is a really crafty small forward, and he fits that need of exactly what we need. It's an odd one because we have heaps of forwards, but we do not have a small crumbing forward who's creative, who can do the dirty work and crumb the packs. We've got a lot of medium types. Paul Curtis does a little bit of that, but we really don't have someone that can do that. And I think Wizard Watson, as he gets called, he could do that for us. And then Dan Curtin, similar in that he fits a need. He's that big key defender. Obviously, you pick the taller players and they're going to take 2, 3, 4 years to develop. But we're also 2 or 3 or 4 years away from being, really worth talking about. So I don't see it as such a negative that we take him at this point because, we can develop him. Obviously, Ben McKay took a while to come on. We know that these bigger players do take longer, but he fits that need for a key defender for us. He's also pretty flexible. He can play through the midfield or play forward. He really is a utility, but the need that he'd be fitting for us would be that key defender. He is from Perth, which I think it shouldn't be a concern, but there's always that little bit of go-home factor that we have to worry about. And obviously, we're seeing the opposite direction with Reid going to West Coast. So I'd love us to pick one of those two. I think probably Curtin is harder to find, but Watson's probably, in terms of the class of him, that very hard to find as well. So I'd be happy with either of those. I'm not expecting either of them. It seems like we're going to go McKercher and Duursma, but I'd love one of those types. Then after that, just if it happens to be none of those, like Sanders, who obviously was tied to us with our academy, but we can't get unless he goes outside the top 40. It seems unlikely that we'll go for him. Nate Caddy is, I listened to an interview with him. He sounded great, but I haven't heard that we've got any interest in taking him higher. He's kind of a medium forward as well. And then O'Sullivan is a key defender. Yeah, would suit the needs that we have, but it seems as though Curtin's clearly ahead of him. So I don't expect that we'll take any of those three, but they're kind of the next three after that. So that's kind of the players that we're looking at with those first couple of picks. As I said, would love to see Wizard Watson or Dan Curtin alongside McKercher, but I am expecting it to be Duursma and McKercher. And I guess that the other challenge with that is it's going to mean that we're going to have even more midfield depth and even more that miss out. So whether that means that someone like Tom Powell or Will Phillips or, even Eddie Ford goes through the wing, maybe it's going to push out players like that. I guess that's where we've got to decide where our priorities are in terms of our current playing list and who we believe in the most. Then, as I said earlier, our other picks are 15, 17 and 18, but across the top 20 picks or so, there's going to be 3, 4, even maybe 5 father-sons and academy picks taken kind of between one and where our first pick goes, or certainly where our pick 18 goes. There's Will McCabe, there's Croft in there. There's 2 more Gold Coast academy players that could get taken. So it's pretty likely that those picks get pushed out and they're actually 19, 21, 22 or even a little later, a pick or two later. So that's what we'll actually be looking at on draft night is picks around that level. So if we think about the needs that we know we've got, I think at this position, that's where you're definitely picking on a needs basis in my mind. So we know that we need another ruckman on the list. We know that we need a really small, crafty forward. We know we need some key position depth. So I've just had a look at some of the players that potentially could go in those spots. The 3 best rucks in the draft pool appear to be Taylor Goad, Will Green, and Mitch Edwards. Mitch Edwards doesn't appear to have really been linked to us. He's a Perth boy, but that doesn't rule him out. He's also part of the Freo Academy, but they don't have access to him or priority access to him unless he goes outside the top 40, much like Riley Sanders. As I said, I haven't heard or read Mitch Edwards being linked to us. The other 2, I think one of them is more likely, so Taylor Goad or Will Green. And obviously these guys would be Project Ruckman. We'd be taking them with, say, pick 20 odd, but as I said with the key position players earlier, Ruckman just take time. So they'd be sitting behind Tristan Jerry, they'd be sitting behind Hamish Free, and potentially behind Coleman Jones if we see him as a ruckman. So I think we'll pick one of them probably. I would say if I had to take a guess, I'd say Will Green, and that's just because he's from Victoria, Goad's from Adelaide, and I think if the players are around the same point in terms of how you value them, I think you probably go with the local player. Yeah, they're both sort of 205-ish centimetres, both big boys, both definitive ruckman, not sort of ruck forwards like they're ruckmen. So if I had to pick one of them, I'd say we might go Will Green, certainly if he's available at that range. In terms of a small forward, like Phoenix Gothard is probably the type that could be available around this area, pretty similar to Watson. So obviously we wouldn't take, I don't think we'd take Gothard and Watson. That'd be if we've taken someone other than Watson earlier on, potentially look at Gothard here. He's a small forward. He's from Victoria, crafty type. So, and a really good name too. We've obviously just got rid of Phoenix Spicer. I think that's a better name, but Phoenix Gothard's not bad. It's got a bit of a ring to it, rolls off the tongue well. So we like that. Final potential one. Ollie Murphy is a 200 centimetre key defender. There has not been any word that he's been linked to us at all, so I'm not expecting this one to happen, but he is that perfect. He's around that mark in terms of early to mid-20s in terms of value. He's a key defender. Yeah, I think if we don't go with Dan Curtin, then he'd be a great option. And to be honest, even if we did go with Dan Curtin, I could see trying to stock up on the key defenders because, you're sort of having a bet each way that maybe one of them comes off and one of them doesn't. Or, if we were to take Curtin and we're worried that maybe he's going to want to head back to Perth and you've got someone like Ollie Murphy sort of, developing for a year or two already. But that's really all I've got. The others there's a lot of midfielders obviously in the early part of the draft, and I don't see us taking midfielder in that 15, 17, 18 area. Look, you never know if maybe all those players that we've looked at are taken. Potentially you look at one, but you would think based on the fact that it's their job that, our development, our drafting departments got an idea of what other clubs are thinking and who they're thinking they might take, and that gives you the ability to say, all right, we're going to target these players. So, yeah, if I was having a guess at who we're going to draft, I think we'll draft McKercher, Duursma with those first two, and then we will take Green, Gothard, and I'll say Ollie Murphy, even though I don't really believe it. Let's say that's the case. I would love us to take, if I had to pick between Watson and Curtin, I think I'd take Curtin. It's only because I think Curtin's harder to find. So I think I'd take McKercher and Curtin, and then I would take, with those mid-range picks, I'd take Will Green, I'd take Phoenix Gothard, and then I'd take Ollie Murphy still, I think, because I'd love to have two of those key backs. Looking at the players sort of would be alternatives in that area. Archer Reid's a key forward. If we wanted to just grab another tall player, like he would I'd say he'll be available there. He's a 203 sort of key forward. Someone that has been linked to us is Harry Di Mattia. He's a sort of midfield forward type at 184. He could also play off halfback potentially. I don't see the value in him necessarily based on our needs is what I'm going at from there. So, but he's another one that's in that ballpark. So, yeah, that's who I'd be looking at. I don't think Lance Collard will get to us. He's another smaller forward from Perth. I don't expect that he'll be available just based on what I've seen there. And Riley Hardiman is another one that's been linked to us potentially as a midfielder. He is a taller midfielder, which we like. But yeah, that's all I've got for the draft. I just think, ultimately we need to remember that the drafting for need doesn't address that need right away. So it's not like if we nail this draft, we're going to be super competitive next year. That's not going to be what changes our fortunes immediately. They're going to need time, and you need to hope that you've got the right players, and then in the years to come, it hopefully comes off. Like the reason that we're in this position where we have these needs is because we've missed some draft picks over the past couple of years, and we've also been super midfielder focused. Like the majority of our drafting over the past 3 or 4 years has been on midfielders, particularly at that, our first round picks or our picks in the top 20 or so. So that's why we've ended up with this sort of plethora of midfield forwards, but without, a specialist small forward. We did try to address that with Phoenix Spicer, and it hasn't worked out, and maybe Robert Hansen Jr. does, but early signs weren't fantastic. Ben Mackay's left. You could argue about whether or not we pushed him out or he really wanted to go, but that's one of the key reasons that we need a key defender, is because we've developed him for 8 years and then we've shipped him off. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the draft. We'll see how right or wrong I am. As I said, I don't feel super confident that I'm an expert in this at all. I just, based on the information I've got, that's what I'm hoping and looking for. I know we've got that really late pick in the 50s that's probably going to become sort of a late 40s pick or something like that. I have no idea if we'll even take that pick, and I certainly have no idea who we will take with it if we if we were to use it. So I'm not gonna pretend that I've got anything to say about that one. So yeah, I will definitely podcast after the draft, probably in 2 weeks' time. Just thinking around the draft's on a Monday and then a Tuesday, so it's probably unlikely I'll podcast midweek in reaction to it. But look, you never know. But I'll certainly be podcasting afterwards to kind of review who we've gotten and then maybe do a bit more of a deep dive on the sorts of players that they are. So you can look forward to that sort of week and a half to 2 weeks. As I said earlier, I just wanted to take a quick couple of minutes to talk about the AFLW. What a win. What an amazing win today as I'm recording this. Smashed Melbourne 50-9. So through to the preliminary final. It's fantastic to get that breakthrough win against one of the other top 4 sides. If you've been following along this year, we have played the other top 3 sides once and lost to all of them. Melbourne were actually pretty comfortable winners over us earlier in the year, but it was pretty heartbreaking close losses to the Crows and to the Lions. So really, I'm sure it's a massive sort of relief to actually finally get a win against one of them. We've got the week off now, and we're straight through to a home preliminary final. So super, super exciting. I don't know that it'll get played at Arden Street. It's probably more likely to be Icon Park, but nonetheless, it's a Melbourne-based final, and we'll be playing either Adelaide or Sydney. So you take that, they're going to be travelling either way. We're not going to be. Yeah, Brisbane had they had an upset win against Adelaide. So both of those top 2 sides have lost in the first week of finals. North Melbourne takes advantage. We're through the prelim, and we'll play Adelaide or Sydney in a couple of weeks. Just watching that game, it was a couple of stray thoughts. Like, Randall is an absolute bulldozer, and sometimes to her detriment. I think she could play the ball a little bit more often. Not because she's dirty. I just think that sometimes if she played the ball a bit more often, she'd be better off. But she is so tough. She just smashed through Libby Birch a couple of times, and I would not want to stand, in the hole, knowing that she's coming through behind me. She would hurt when she hits. Riddell, super clean, super fast as always. She's had another amazing season. I thought Garner, it wasn't her best game, but it's all relative. Like, she was still one of the best handful, and she is that kind of grunt work in that she just gets the ball in the boot, gets it forward 40 metres, clearance beast. She wasn't bad by any stretch. I just didn't think that she really tore the game to shreds like she has at times this year. And Sheila is just so flexible. I think it's really underrated to have a player like Sheila who can swing back when you just want to park the bus for a moment or two or slow it down. It's a massive pro to have her, with that ability to do that. It looked like she might have nearly lost some of her front teeth in a pack situation in that last quarter. I'm not sure what the update on that was, but she certainly had some blood coming from her mouth. So hopefully 2 weeks off or the week off will do her some good. But yeah, she's just so flexible. She had a fantastic score involvement today on the run. Got a big handball over the top to Randall, who then got another handball over. I can't remember who it went to. It might have been... No, I don't remember, but that was a fantastic team goal that she was a part of. So, yeah, we go into the prelim with a lot of momentum. We did make the prelim last year, so that was certainly from a different position. I think we came there from 7th or 8th last year. So, from 3rd, we're better off. We've got the week off. We know that we are going to be playing interstate side, and then... Yeah, at this stage, it looks like we'll be playing Brisbane in a grand final if we were to make it. They'd have to be favourites, but plenty of water to go under the bridge yet. And, just super exciting to at least have the girls' side up and about, knowing how dismal the men's side's been over the past couple of years. It's good to have some success at the club. That's going to be it for the podcast, I think, for this week. Just wanted to get a quick one out there. It never ends up being as quick as you think it's going to be, but I've certainly kept it shorter than some of my episodes from earlier in the year. So as I said, I will do a pod in the next sort of 10 to 14 days reviewing the draft. So that draft's on the 20th and the 21st of November, Monday, Tuesday night. So I know we'll all be looking to see who we pick up there. I'll definitely do a podcast after that. And certainly if the girls make it into the grand final, we might extend the podcast season for another week. We'll see how we go. Yeah, that's it. Hope you all have a fantastic week. We're getting close to the end of the year now, middle of November. It's happening so fast. I think pre-season starts tomorrow for the boys. So, I can't believe it just goes so quickly, that October and November period, and all of a sudden we're thinking about footy again. So, yeah, have a great week, everyone, and I will speak to you soon. Go North. Thanks for listening to another episode of North Pod. Please subscribe to the podcast on your app and give me a rating or a review if you can. I'd really appreciate it. You can find me on all social media at North Pod Show. That's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Threads, you name it, I'm there. I'll see you next episode.